In one ordinary home, on one ordinary street, the unthinkable was about to happen, and the ripples would reach far beyond that bedroom.
Hey guys, we're your hosts. I'm Fenella.
And I'm Jess.
And this is Cozy Crime Club. Each episode, we explore real cases from the eerie to the outrageous with curiosity, empathy, and just the right amount of dark humour. So pour yourself a big mug of something warm, tea, coffee, or maybe something a little stronger, grab a blanket, and settle in. Welcome to the club. Hey guys, welcome back to Cozy Crime Club. So Jess, I hear that you have another local or at least Australian case for us today. I'm so excited to dive into it. Tell us more.
Yes, I am bringing us a local case. It's in Sydney. I'm finding that a lot of cases that draw me in, when you're just trying to find them and you're looking online, I'm finding that I don't know what it is about, because a lot of people ask me, how do you pick a case? And I've never been able to answer that. You see a case and you see a picture of the victim, usually, maybe the perpetrator, and I don't know, it draws you in and you think this is something that needs to be told. This is something we need to discuss.
Yeah, I mean, you've said this before. You'll see a picture of something to do with the case, typically maybe the victim, and something about them kind of captures your attention or captivates you and you just want to tell their story. And I absolutely love that about all of your cases because they are so forefront and center.
Yeah, that's actually, you've summed it up so much better than I ever could. Thank you. But yeah, that's exactly what happened with this one too. So I'm finding a pattern in my own behaviours at the moment. So this story develops in 2017. It actually starts a little earlier, but we'll get to that. So we're in Sydney's southwest. Suburbs here were known for their friendly atmosphere, where residents enjoyed local shopping strips, parks, and community centres. Places like Glenfield, Revesby, and Panania were family suburbs, but they've always carried an edge. Back then, Sydney's underworld was in a restless phase. The big-name bikie wars had cooled, but the debris remained. Old grudges, prison connections, and young men chasing respect in all the wrong ways. A lot of that spilled quietly into the suburbs, far from the flashy crime headlines. Culturally, it was a strange time. The rise of social media had given everyone a platform and a voice, but not much empathy. There was this growing obsession with being tough, showing loyalty and never backing down. And in that environment, pride was currency. You could lose everything else but not your reputation. It was in that version of Sydney, tough, divided, and brittle with ego, that 15-year-old Brayden Dillon went to sleep one Good Friday morning, unaware that someone else's pride had already sealed his fate. Before we get into the events that made headlines, I want to stop for a moment and just talk about Brayden himself. Because before anything else, he was just a kid. It was so funny looking at photos of him. You can just see his energy. And in nearly every photo, he's throwing up apparently a trademark middle finger. And not kind of angry or rebellious, just cheeky. The kind of smile that would say, I know exactly what I'm doing. He had these big, bright blue eyes that everyone talks about. The sort of eyes people mention again and again because they were hard to forget. He went to school, hung out with mates, probably annoyed his family like every other normal teenager. Friends describe him as funny, warm, and easy to be around. The kind of guy who'd pick up on a bad mood and do something ridiculous just to make you laugh. A woman who'd known his family for years told a story about watching him swim with her kids. She said Brayden didn't know she was listening, but he was being so gentle with her younger son, treating him like a little brother, making sure he felt included. That moment stuck with her. She said, I knew then that this kid had a beautiful heart and soul, and there was no showing off, just genuine kindness. Comments online are full of the same descriptions. Kind, loyal, protective, funny. Someone wrote that he had this gift for noticing when people felt left out, and he'd just fix it, bring them in, and make them feel included. Another said that he could make anyone smile, even strangers on the street. So you start to build a picture of a 15-year-old who was still figuring out who he was, that mix of humour, softness, and mischief that makes teenage boys so exhausting, and so wonderful. That's who we're talking about today. Not a headline or a statistic, just Brayden Dillon, 15 years old, full of life, and who had every reason to believe he had all the time in the world.
He sounds like an absolute sweetheart. Just so empathetic.
Yeah, going through his memorial pages online and just seeing how, for someone so young too, to be so kind and, like you said, empathetic, it's not that it's rare, but I mean, it's just so wonderful. Like, it's so gorgeous to see, and to see how he impacted the lives of everyone around him just showed what an amazing person he was.
Yeah, I would say it's probably not rare, but it is, I think, maybe unusual to be that consistently like empathetic and known to be, this wonderful inclusive person at that age, because that is prepubescent and then teenager, that's kind of leading into there's a time of turmoil,
Yeah,
basically, inner turmoil.
sure is.
And wow, he just sounds like a brilliant kid.
Yeah.
So what unfolded?
Well, it was the early hours of Good Friday, April 14th, 2017. The kind of quiet that sits heavy over the suburbs, that strange calm that can only happen before dawn. Inside a home in Glenfield, 15-year-old Brayden Dillon was asleep in his bedroom. He lived there with his mum, stepdad, and siblings. It was an ordinary night, nothing to hint that their lives were about to be ripped apart. Not long before sunrise, it was just after 6 a.m., a car pulled up outside. Neighbours wouldn't think much of it at the time. Cars come and go all the time in those streets. But later, police would confirm that the car had arrived roughly 15 minutes before the murder. Inside it sat a man wearing a mask. He got out of the car and waltzed up to the door. He didn't knock, he didn't wait. He kicked in the front door. Once inside, he went straight upstairs to Brayden's room. Brayden's mother was the first to see him. She was confronted at gunpoint. The masked man waved a weapon at her, threatening her to stay back, before turning down the hall. He went straight into Brayden's room, where the teenager still lay in bed asleep. And then, without hesitation, he shot him in the head at close range. The sound of the gunshot shattered the silence. His mother screamed while his stepfather rushed into the room. The younger children woke up crying, confused and terrified. Paramedics were called immediately. They arrived quickly, but there was little they could do. Brayden was treated at the scene, then rushed to the Children's Hospital at Westmead, and he died soon after. The car that had brought his killer left the street just minutes later. 5 minutes, that's all it took. From the moment the door was kicked in to the moment the car disappeared again into the rising sun. In that time, a young teenager was murdered, execution style, in his own bed.
That's horrifying.
I know.
Oh my gosh.
I know. This is, like I said, this case has kind of headlines, and that's the first thing you see. So it obviously grabs your attention, but it's attention-grabbing worthy. It's so, it's not something you hear about. It's just in the suburbs. This is a young boy, young man. He's right on that verge. And like just asleep, it's so unthinkable.
Yeah. And early in the morning too, like just before people are getting up for the day and everything, it's sort of one of the, I don't know what the statistics are on that, but it just, it sounds like it would be one of the least times that you would expect something like that to happen. You kind of be like, the sun's about to come up, everything's fine, new day's dawning.
Such a good point. I feel like a lot of murders I've ever looked at are kind of at nighttime, overnight, in the evening. It does seem like a strange time of day. Very targeted.
Scary.
And very scary. When police arrived at the Glenfield home that Good Friday morning, they were met with an extremely confronting scene. They could see quite quickly this didn't appear to be an accident or a break-in gone wrong. This had been deliberate, controlled, and calculated. As Brayden's mother tried to explain what had happened, detectives were already asking the question everyone wanted answered. Why? Why would someone hunt down a young boy while he slept? The first clues pointed backwards, to the previous year. In July 2016, Brayden's older brother 18-year-old Joshua Dillon, had been involved in a violent confrontation in Panania that ended with the death of Adam Abu Mahmoud, another local 18-year-old man. Reports later revealed it began as a fight between two groups of young men near a shopping strip. After that clash, Adam and two others turned up at Joshua's home, allegedly armed with hammers and knives. Inside the house were Joshua's partner and their young child. What happened next would change two families forever. Joshua armed himself with a knife, and in the struggle that followed, stabbed Adam 4 times in the back. Adam died soon after arriving at hospital. Joshua was arrested and charged, but 2 years later, a Supreme Court jury found him not guilty, accepting that he had acted in self-defense.
So this is obviously very important context for what's happened. Quite shocking to hear this. I wasn't expecting it to quite go in this direction because these are teenagers, right? These are all people in high school or just out of high school.
I think Adam was still in TAFE as far as I read, so there are still students or not long gone. It's just, it's funny because I read 18-year-old man and I just instantly thought, and I've thought this before about other cases I've seen where someone is, 18, 19, and they say man because you technically are, but we've all been there and we're so not. Like, you're still such a child. Your brain's not even fully developed, but just you're still so young. So yeah, that actually is really important context. I don't know what you think about that, where the Supreme Court the jury found him not guilty for reasons of self-defense. So basically Adam rocked up, so that there had been a fight, and then he had come with 2 friends to Josh's house, armed. I believe from what I've read, it happened out the front. Joshua just was like, I've got a young child. It would have been a very young child inside. So yeah, I know it gets a bit dicey with self-defense. I mean, there's been people in Australia that I have read about who have had people break into their home. I remember reading of one, I have no idea the name or the location or anything like that, but the person broke in and the dad found the person standing in the room of their child. And I believe he ended up killing the intruder, but I think he got charged with murder. Yeah, so I believe he got off because there was a huge kind of public outcry, I think, just saying like, this is wild.
As there should be in a case like that.
Yeah.
I struggle with any time there isn't sort of a right to defend oneself and one's home or family. And I'm not here trying to say that I know the ins and outs of everything that Australian law tells us, but whenever there's some kind of conflict there where someone intrudes into another person's home, personal space, things like that, that's a very bold choice that they're making to do that. And that does come with risk. That's, at their peril, I would say. You can't just invade people's space, and especially can't do that and attack them as well and expect that they won't do anything or defend themselves. There's consequences for your actions. And I think it's a terrible twist of fate when people are, held accountable for things that they were just doing as anyone would in self-defense, particularly in your own home, because that's your safe space. That's where no one's allowed in unless you let them in. You set the rules of engagement and everything in your home. And when you don't, you should just be able to kick them out or do something about it, call the cops. You can do something. You should have those options. And whatever option is available and that you take, you shouldn't be punished for it, I would say, if that was your best option at that time. But obviously, every case has its own nuance. There's context. There's interpersonal relationships. There's so much that goes into it. So not making any crazy blanket statements here. But when it comes to self-defense, I have strong feelings, clearly.
Yeah. No, I do. I absolutely do too. I'm so with you, everything you said. I'm glad that he was found not guilty of that by the jury. I don't have all of the case notes or anything in front of me. This one was actually quite hard to get. I believe Joshua had a friend there that at some point had Adam in a headlock. And I think the case more was like, well, was he in a headlock when Joshua stabbed him, to work out how much of it was self-defense. So And the friend who was there was 17 as well. So his name or anything like that can't be released. So this whole case was hard to kind of find information on, but it turned out that the headlock didn't happen at the time Adam was stabbed, I believe, which was the result of the whole thing was self-defense. But that took 2 years to reach that. And I believe at the time, and I believe at the time, though, Joshua was being held while they're waiting for that to go through. So can you imagine from the family going through first the incident in 2016 with an older son, Joshua, and then having that happen less than a year later?
That is too much to bear.
Yeah. And then imagine Joshua having to be held and then finding out that happened to your brother. And they were only 3 years apart, roughly 3 years apart.
And you weren't there to do anything about it as well.
And trying to grieve in that location, not being around.
Yeah.
Oh, I can't even imagine.
I wonder if part of him being held, obviously I don't know, but I'm just wondering if part of him being held was maybe an attempt to prevent more violence. You know how sometimes they don't want to create more friction. And if there was already all this friction and people were going to their home of all places, like no fear or anything, just turning up and attacking people in their homes, they might just be like, let's cool the jets, until we have a verdict. Obviously, that didn't stop whatever happened next. So.
That's such a good point, though. Well, what happened? So before Joshua and Adam's case in the courts had come to an end, obviously the Abu Mahmoud family was still grieving the loss of Adam as well. He was only 18. Their son and brother and nephew was gone, and that wasn't something they were able to move on from. Police would later allege that this is where the seed of Brayden's murder was planted, in the anger, grief, and pride that refused to settle. In April 2017, 9 months after Adam's death, someone kicked in the Dillon's family door while Brayden was asleep, and within minutes, he was dead. The brutality of it shocked even seasoned homicide detectives. The working theory emerged quickly. This was retribution, a message, not a random act. Police scoured the Glenfield area for CCTV, soon finding footage of a silver Mazda that had arrived at the property before the shooting and driven off soon after. They put to the media and their social media photos of the car saying the number plate wasn't legible, but they knew that finding the car would eventually lead them to the killer. The car was later found abandoned in an underground car park in Jamisontown, a discovery that cracked the case open. A 26-year-old man named Conrad Craig was soon arrested and charged with Brayden's murder. Investigators described him as a hired gunman connected to Sydney's underworld. But police were working on the premise that someone else had brought Craig in to carry out a contracted killing, and the burning question remained: who had ordered the hit? In 2018, detectives arrested Abdul Abu Mahmoud, the uncle of Adam. He had been living overseas, but he was intercepted at Sydney Airport after flying in from Thailand. Police alleged he had orchestrated Brayden's murder as revenge, hiring Craig and coordinating others to help plan and cover it up. Soon more names surfaced. Abdul's brother, Mohammed, was charged with helping to clean up the aftermath, accused of arranging false affidavits and passing information between those involved. Even at one point, a Sydney criminal lawyer, Ali Abbas, was caught up in the investigation, charged as an accessory after the fact. As far as I could find, in 2024, I believe, he was found not guilty for this. As detectives followed the threads further, the trail led to prison walls. The name Bassam Hamzy, founder of the Brothers for Life gang, began appearing in phone intercepts and witness statements. Police alleged that Hamzy had tried to organise false evidence from behind bars to confuse investigators and protect those responsible. Hamzy denied it completely, but by then the scale of the case was clear. A teenage fight had exploded into a multi-layered revenge plot spanning families, gangs, lawyers, and prisons. Through it all, Brayden's family were forced to live the consequences of a feud that had nothing to do with him. They'd already survived one tragedy, Joshua's fight for his own life and then freedom. And then, before the dust had even settled, another son was stolen from them in the cruelest way imaginable. It's a story that's as much about cycles as it is about crime, cycles of pride, vengeance, and misplaced justice that can swallow entire families. And because somewhere along the way, someone decided that grief demanded blood.
This is a really, really, really tragic turn of events.
It really is. Reading this was so sad from everyone's perspective, I feel. Just such young people involved in these deadly games. It was just, it's so tragic.
Yeah, you're completely right, though, that each family is impacted, like, regardless of choices that people made, you know, what's done is done. And they really are impacted in such a horrible way. There's so much loss. And it does seem senseless, especially Brayden, but overall as well. Like, there's no reason to lose your children, you know?
I know. It's a parent's worst nightmare unfolding. And even, you know, if you think about Adam, who there was a fight, and there was no information on the previous one that led to that, but even Adam coming armed and he ended up dying. It's so sad because even he was just 18, and you just make, like, we can look back and just think, oh my God, what was I doing when I was 18? And especially men, they're meant to, like, this is totally developmentally normal, is they're meant to make really risky decisions. It's just part of how they're wired. And I think what's so sad is that Adam even died too. You know, we're talking about loss for every family involved here. And he made this choice that, you know, if he was looking back as a 35-year-old man, 45-year-old man, he'd be like, oh, that was so stupid. I didn't need to go there and do that. But he obviously doesn't have the choice now. So it's sad that Joshua was put in that position as well. And like I said, I don't know the facts of the case before then and how involved he was in that. But, you know, he was found not guilty due to self-defense. And, you know, I both talked about that's very valid. It's your house. It's your safe place. And the fight came to him, didn't it? So what are you going to do?
Yeah, well, exactly. It did come to him. And both times they were targeted as a family. And I can totally understand, you know, on their family side of things, just being so exasperated by this whole thing. You know, obviously there are all the other emotions as well, which are really strong emotions like anger and grief and maybe even just a little bit of maybe not wanting to get back so much, but maybe just wanting to see the law applied, at least some sense of justice. But also on the flip side of that, you have Adam's family as well. And as you said, you know, they have had loss too. And when I guess to that point, you made such a good observation about if any of these people that were fighting and involved in what stirred it all up, if they were looking back as 30-year-olds, as 40-year-olds, 50-year-olds, they very well might be thinking, I wish I never did that. We all have things that, even if they're little stupid things, that we're like, oh, you know, that was a me I don't remember. But also there's a period of time attached to those decisions as well. And you have time to reflect and make different decisions. And for a few of these people, those decisions were taken away from them, which is heartbreaking.
It is. And I think it obviously gets into such a grey area too, because Joshua was found not guilty. But at the end of the day, we did talk about the boys being very young, although men, I still look at them as, you know, kids. But
I don't consider them men in the sense of the word man. They're not fully grown. You know, they might legally have ticked over. A couple of them, you know, they're 18, but so what? They don't even haven't had time for a university degree or to decide they want to quit their university degree. You know, they're just little babies.
I know. And then my thoughts are too, we don't know what, I guess Adam, his voice was taken from him, as we talk about when people are killed. And so we don't know what his intention was. Well, at the end of the day, though, he was 18. Yes, we've agreed it's young and they do reckless things. But at the end of the day, he still made the decision to do that. I think it's important that it goes to court and is tested. But at the end of the day, Adam did make that choice to go. And I think the family, you know, Adam's family, although they're grieving, that's a process they need to let happen, because Adam still made that choice to go there, to initiate that situation. And as devastating as it is, and we've talked that he probably wouldn't make that decision in 5, 10, 20 years post that event, that he still did. You know, at a very young age, you know what's right from wrong.
Like, you're responsible for it. I mean, I believe people are responsible for their choices regardless. But when we are talking about this specific case, we lack so much of that nuance, as you've said, because we don't have the insight into what was he thinking. And other people can fill in those gaps. But as we always say, when someone's voice is taken from them, regardless of what actions led to that, that's kind of where our knowledge ends. We don't have a means, really, of getting into their psyche. And also, sometimes that isn't necessarily important. He was harmed. It sounds as though somewhat excessively. You said he was stabbed, I think, 4 times.
Yeah.
And that's a fair amount. You know, that's a lot of times to stab someone if your intention isn't to do at least permanent damage, if not, end things in some way. We have to bear that in mind as well.
Yeah, I mean, it takes a lot of effort to do that, I would assume, and doing it 4 times as well. And I'm sure that would have got heavily discussed in court. But also, if you fear that that person, if you don't put a stop to them, that they will come and hurt you.
True.
Yeah,
True.
like,
Yeah. Sometimes maybe you're just like, I have to keep going, or I'm at risk
yeah.
still.
Yeah, and it's not like it was like 20 times. It was 4, and you could argue, is that excessive? And I'm sure they did. But you also got to think they're under such adrenaline that if he got stabbed once, he might not stop. Yeah, like you said, it's very nuanced. Every situation is going to be different, but
It's everyone that's left behind that, deals with all of these questions and the struggles of not having all the answers, or things playing out in court in a way that you think maybe doesn't serve justice to whichever role you're supporting in the interaction, or just for yourself. It doesn't bring you peace. None of it brings people peace, And that's really, I guess, the hardest thing, is that this does live on forever and, just echoes through their lives.
those ripples, yeah. So, in the aftermath of Brayden Dillon's execution, the web of revenge and deceit began to unravel, slowly, painfully, and in layers. Detectives from Strike Force Wongala spent years piecing together what happened that Good Friday morning in 2017, and who ordered it. At the centre, as we mentioned, was Abdul Abu Mahmoud, uncle of Adam, who was fatally wounded, but under the law, justified. And it should have ended there, but it didn't. The prosecution said Abdul was enraged and unwilling to accept what happened to his nephew, and that he swore revenge. They proposed he had arranged for masked gunmen, Brothers for Life member Conrad Craig, to storm the Glenfield home and murder Brayden. Craig was later sentenced to 40 years in prison for killing Brayden, and his sister, Kimberly Craig, admitted she laundered $20,000 on his behalf as payment for lying to shield others involved. Afterwards, she would admit she helped her brother due to feeling pressured by him and concern for his mental state, stating she felt disgusted in herself for helping him. So the hired gun, Conrad Craig, he got 40 years, which I personally feel is unheard of. I never hear 40 years, at least in our justice system. So that feels like an adequate. I mean, you can't put a price on Brayden's life at all, but I feel 40 years is decent from what we find and what we've found.
Oh, definitely. They could even just make 40 years the standard, in my opinion, and go up from there in terms of murder cases, because sometimes we hear the most ridiculous things. Yeah, so I'm glad to hear that. All right, what happened? What else happened then?
Well, over time, detectives charged several accomplices. There was lots of people charged. There was the getaway driver. I didn't find out what happened to her at all, but I think the getaway driver might have had the charges thrown out eventually. But there was like a getaway driver. There was heaps of arrests at airports randomly when people are coming back. The police just swooped. So I think there was several arrests at airports for this, but lots of people involved. The police wanted to make sure we're covered because you had a gunman, you had someone who they believe hired that person. And then you've got people that are covering it up. I mean, there was also that lawyer that was charged, a criminal lawyer, who eventually was found not guilty for that years later. But yeah, it's very huge ripple effect with this case and all of the people that were involved.
And it sounds like they were really trying to tackle it from every angle as well.
Make sure there was no stone left unturned. I agree.
Yeah.
I think it sounds like this strike force did a really good job in this case. I think there's a lot of times they feel like their detectives are between a rock and a hard place, and a lot of the time they don't get the outcome that they want and that they spend hours and years working on. So they obviously were very detailed in this case. There was this innocent boy taken, and they wanted to make sure every single person who had been part of that was held accountable. So by 2020, Justice Ian Harrison of the New South Wales Supreme Court convicted Abdul of murder, declaring him the ringleader behind Brayden's execution. The court noted his inflamed passions and his obsession with vengeance. He was covered in tattoos. He had Adam's name tattooed on him. He also had a couple others. Police had photos of them all, but one of them said, "My family is not to be effed with." And another one said, "Revenge is a dish best served cold." And the L in cold was replaced with a picture of a gun. So I don't know why you would just... Obviously, he's very passionate about it, and that's what essentially what the judge in the court said is his inflamed passions were the word that was used. So he's so passionate. He's getting this tattooed on his body. So he's not really
sounds
doing
so
himself.
Impulsive, but
Yeah.
I mean, like maybe not, but just in terms of tattoos, people that have multiple tattoos will know that tattoos themselves can be an indication of impulsivity, because you, especially if it's maybe a smaller one or a more simple design, because you kind of just maybe, as soon as you have a couple, it's easy to just go, I'll just get another one. And for him to be having these kind of tattoos, which don't necessarily, they're not like great works of art necessarily by the sounds of it, it could be an indication of some kind of impulsivity. You have an emotion and you go, I'll get their name tattooed on me. It's a beautiful thing for family. It absolutely is. I'm not knocking that at all. Love tattoos, absolutely love them. I have a bunch. That's why I know that it can.
Yeah, I'm speaking from experience.
Very much, it can very much mean that you are just living on a whim.
Yeah.
So that could play into it, and that speaks to the passion that they were referencing as well.
Absolutely. Well, Abdul insisted he'd been framed. So in letters from prison, when he was being held, I believe, he pointed the finger at notorious underworld boss Bassam Hamzy, who we spoke of earlier, claiming Hamzy had orchestrated the entire hit and manipulated witnesses, including hitman Craig, to testify against Abdul. Abdul claimed Hamzy's lawyers warned him to keep his mouth shut, and the witnesses were told to implicate him. The court, however, dismissed this as conjecture. And I mean, my question is why so this person he's saying framed him, he's very well known in the criminal world. He's in prison himself for killing someone, I believe in 1998. But what is his play in the game? Why would he have had Brayden executed? What would it be to him? Do you know what I mean? I'm just kind of like,
Oh, totally know what you mean. I'm hoping you have something to tell us, but if you don't, then I'm thinking, well, in that case, it doesn't make sense. There's obviously things that we don't know and we'll never know, but what tie does he even have to the family as a whole? Never mind Brayden.
Well, good question, because I was trying to find that. And so Hamzy, who is the founder of this gang, Brothers for Life, the hitman was in that gang, but I also believe that Abdul and his family were involved. So I believe they were all involved in this group, as far as I'm aware. I mean, that could be, allegedly, but I just don't see how it ties so closely with Brayden's
revenge
murder.
plot.
Yeah.
It sounds such a personal thing. And everything's personal in a gang, and every member's your family. It doesn't make sense to do something, I don't know why they would. Why would they? It doesn't sound like it makes sense. So I'm with you on that. It just sounds like such a personal side quest by extension, in a way.
Yeah, and the court saw it like that. So they dismissed what Abdul said, saying that's conjecture. And the prosecution's case was that because Joshua was in prison, still awaiting for his trial to end for the murder of Adam, that Abdul targeted his younger brother instead. So the process of Joshua took 2 years. And so the prosecution is saying, well, Abdul he wasn't going to wait that long. He wanted to kind of take this into his own hands and decided he would get revenge on Joshua by killing his younger brother.
It makes sense if they wanted to get revenge on him by killing his younger brother anyway, because it is more painful to have a loved one be targeted than yourself. But if they were actually wanting, to go for Joshua, then they would have just got rid of him, in the prison, I would think. it
Yeah.
wouldn't take much for them to do that. They'd have connections all over that place. Lots of question marks on that, but
Yeah. And we're fine leaving question marks. That's cool too.
100%. We're
Yeah. I
never going to know
mean,
everything.
I know, and you're so right. And if anyone else has a take, let us know. Now, the end of all of this, Abdul's trial, and this, again, it was like 2020, kind of 2021-ish. Abdul was found guilty for 2 counts of soliciting murder and 1 count of murder. So that second soliciting count was apparently, from what I've read, an earlier attempt to put a hit on Brayden, but the gunman for that one pulled out, I believe. But apparently the prosecution had kind of got their evidence to show that he had, or proof that he had done that once before. Now, as the verdict was read out in court, Abdul started tearing up. He continuously put his head in his hands, shaking his head and mouthing the words bullshit to his family. So obviously, no, he's just, I didn't do it. I am innocent. So he was facing life in prison. We mentioned that the person who actually killed Brayden, who shot him, got 40 years. I saw in one report it was 30 years, but everything else I found said 40. So we're going to go with 40. I do think that's what he ended up getting. Maybe he got 40, but maybe there was a set, like a minimum term of at least 30, which I still think is decent from the injustice that we have seen in the past. So Abdul was facing life in prison. He got found guilty of those 3 counts. And then the sentencing hearing will be after that. We had to wait 8 weeks for that hearing, which I don't know why. And you might know, Fenella. I don't. Is it that the judge has to go away and determine what the sentence will be? Is that why it takes time?
Not actually 100% sure, but I feel like potentially they are working on other things. It's all paperwork, you know? And so it just, everything, it feels like through the court system takes an awfully long time, more than you would expect. I think that plays into a lot of the delays that we see, you know, as frustrating as it is.
Well, actually, speaking of those delays, with him having to wait 8 weeks just for the sentencing, once they got to the sentencing hearing, he had hired a new lawyer. And because she had only been there a week, needed time to review the case because there's like so much information. So they applied for another
An
extension.
extension.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. So literally as you were saying that.
Who brings, I can't believe he just hired a new lawyer then. Was that maybe on purpose to get an extension? Oh my gosh, what the heck?
I think that could be a tactic. I've seen it before. I think it's a pretty common tactic. They like to just extend as far as they can just so they can have just more time to work out what they're going to do. So he hired a new lawyer a week before the sentencing hearing.
It's wild.
I know.
Imagine.
And the family, like, can you imagine? You would have that in your mind and calendar, like, this is the sentencing hearing. We're going to work out how is he going to get punished for taking our son.
Yeah.
And then you have another kick in the guts of like, oh my God, now we have to just mentally prepare all over again.
Yeah, that is so bad for everyone else that's waiting to, you know, for this to proceed. That is super distressing.
And I could not find for the life of me anywhere what Abdul's sentence ended up being. I've worked out that he appealed, but I cannot find the sentence. I'm like, I don't know if it's got to that, if it still hasn't been, because that was 2021. But I could not find what he got served with. It's obviously going to be probably, you'd think, a similar time to the person who killed Brayden is probably what, well, we've seen also that not happen. But I can't find it. If anyone can find it, and I have tried to scour everywhere, I don't know. I don't know how long he got. Only that he had appealed.
I love this. All right. Well, club members, it's your opportunity to get involved. If you could please update this case.
Yeah. And if we
At
find
your
an
earliest
update,
convenience.
yes, please. Well, despite the constant shifting of blame and no one taking accountability, what remains clear is this. The underworld's code of payback swallowed everyone it touched. It's the kind of story that lays bare what vengeance really is. A hunger that eats everything around it. Pride masquerading as justice. A refusal to accept pain without passing it on. While the men implicated in the plot tore each other down from inside prison walls, Brayden's friends and family kept his memory alive in a very different way. On his birthdays, they gather purple balloons, that's his favourite colour, laughter through tears to celebrate the cheeky kid with the big, bright blue eyes that could make anyone laugh. They share stories instead of threats and love instead of revenge. Maybe I think that is the real sickness behind it all. This obsession of picking sides. Every headline, every argument online, every feud, it seems to be just us versus them. Someone wins, someone loses. There doesn't seem to be any middle ground anymore. No grace. But I feel when you strip it down, when you stand in a quiet room where a child used to live, none of that matters. All of a sudden, the sides blur and scorekeeping stops. In this case, all that's left is a family who'll never see their boy again, and a world that keeps forgetting how to choose mercy over pride.
Well, thanks for bringing this case to us, Jess. It's been absolutely heartbreaking, but that only makes it more important to discuss and to remember. Thanks for getting cozy with us today, guys. If you enjoyed this episode, please leave us a review or share the club with a friend. You can join us on YouTube, Instagram, and Spotify, because here we leave the kettle on and the comments open. Until next time, stay curious, stay kind, and stay cozy.